I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel. High Administrator Xylith's crystalline appendages trembled as he reviewed the latest applicants to the Galactic Competency Assessment. In his 300 cycles of service, he had never seen a species quite like these. Humans. Commander Nadia Patel and Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez stood before him, their casual demeanor completely at odds with the gravity of the situation. "You understand," Xylith's translation matrix conveyed with carefully measured tones, "that no species has ever passed the GCA on their first attempt. The Mindweavers of Centauri took 30 years just to complete the preliminary forms." "With all due respect, Administrator," Nadia said, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear, "we're pretty good at tests." Her eyes sparkled with something Xylith couldn't quite identify. Was it amusement? Impossible. The GCA was not amusing. Marcus was already examining the hovering holographic displays around them, his fingers twitching as if eager to interact with the ancient systems. "These processing matrices, they're running on quantum crystal architecture, aren't they? Fascinating." "Please do not touch the sacred assessment interfaces," Junior Administrator Vorlix chittered in alarm. The arthropoid official's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress among his species. "The first trial begins in exactly 15 rotations," Xylith announced. "You will need this time to prepare your mental states and—" "Actually," Nadia interrupted, "we're ready now." The assessment chamber fell silent. Even the ever-present hum of the quantum processors seemed to pause in shock. The gathered alien officials, representing 12 different species and countless centuries of bureaucratic tradition, stared at the humans with a mixture of horror and fascination. Now, Xylith's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. That's not possible. The preparation period is mandatory. It's been mandatory since the great bureaucratic consensus of Cycle 47,392. Marcus pulled out a small device, a tablet, as humans called it, and began typing. "I've already analyzed the preparation protocols. They're mostly meditation exercises and form reviews, right? We did those on the flight here." "On the flight here," Vorlix's exoskeleton turned a pale shade of green. "But the preliminary meditation documents alone are 7,000 pages. "Speed reading," Nadia shrugged. "Plus, Marcus here has an eidetic memory. Shall we begin?" Xylith's crystalline body vibrated with uncertainty. This was not how things were done. This was not how things had ever been done. The GCA was a carefully orchestrated dance of procedure and protocol designed to test not just competence but patience, adherence to tradition, and respect for the proper order of things. But as he looked at the two humans standing before him, Xylith felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: curiosity. Perhaps it was time to see what would happen when immovable bureaucracy met unstoppable human efficiency. "Very well," he announced, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Let the assessment commence. May the great administrator have mercy on us all." The ancient machinery hummed to life, holographic interfaces spinning into existence around them. The first trial, the labyrinth of forms, materialized, its endless corridors of digital paperwork stretching into virtual infinity. "Cool," Marcus said, cracking his knuckles. "Hey, Nadia, want to see who can find the most shortcuts?" "You're on," she grinned, already reaching for the nearest interface. As Xylith watched the humans begin their impossible task, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Galactic Competency Assessment was about to change forever. Whether that change would bring chaos or revolution remained to be seen. The labyrinth of forms had been designed to break spirits, not just test them. Its quantum crystalline corridors twisted through 11 dimensions of bureaucratic complexity, each turn revealing new stacks of forms that needed to be filed in quintuplicate across parallel universes. No species had ever completed it in less than 3 standard months. The humans were halfway through in 4 hours. "This is impossible," Junior Administrator Vorlix muttered, his mandibles clicking rapidly as he watched the monitoring screens. "They're not even filling out the forms properly." "Actually," Marcus called out from within the labyrinth, We We're just doing it efficiently. His fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces simultaneously, while Nadia worked on another set of forms nearby. Efficient, High Administrator Xylith's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. But you haven't even completed the required redundancy recursions. Nadia looked up from her work, her dark eyes twinkling. Oh, those? Yeah, we wrote a macro for that. Turns out your quantum processors accept basic automation protocols. Who knew? A collective gasp echoed through the observation chamber. The gathered officials from across the galaxy watched in horror as centuries of carefully crafted bureaucratic tradition were systematically dismantled by human ingenuity. Automation is, Vorlich struggled to find the words, his exoskeleton now a concerning shade of pale green. It's not explicitly forbidden because no one ever thought it possible. First rule of humanity, Marcus grinned, his fingers never stopping their dance across the interfaces. If you don't tell us we can't do something, we're going to try it. The monitoring systems suddenly flashed, indicating completion of another section. Xylith's crystalline appendages trembled as he reviewed the results. But this section requires careful consideration of 7,000 subclauses. Pattern recognition, Nadia explained, stretching her arms above her head. Once you realize that every 7th subclause is just a reworded version of the first one, it's pretty straightforward. By the way, you might want to update your translation matrices. There's a recursive loop in the xenolinguistic protocol section that's causing some unnecessary confusion. A new alarm sounded through the chamber. The quantum processing core itself seemed to be struggling to keep up with the human's pace. Ancient algorithms, designed to process forms at a stately, dignified pace, were being pushed to their limits. We should stop this, Vorlich chittered nervously. The sacred protocols are working better than ever, Marcus interrupted, pointing to the efficiency metrics displayed on one of the floating screens. Look, your processing speed has increased by 300% just by removing the redundant verification loops. The gathered officials huddled together, their various appendages, tentacles, and crystalline structures trembling in unified distress. This was not just a violation of protocol. It was a fundamental challenge to the very nature of galactic bureaucracy. Oh, hey, Nadia called out, her voice echoing through the labyrinth. We found a shortcut through the temporal documentation zone. Did you know you can bypass the time dilation paperwork by simply filing a paradox exemption form? It was buried in subsection 47 alpha, but it's totally valid. Xylith's crystalline form flickered rapidly, the equivalent of a human hyperventilating. The paradox exemption form was a theoretical construct. It was never meant to be actually used. Well, it works, Marcus shrugged, submitting another batch of completed forms with a flourish. And it just saved us about 3 weeks of processing time. The monitoring systems flashed again, this time with a message that no one had ever expected to see. Labyrinth of FORMS, complete. Time, 5 hours, 23 minutes, 47 seconds. New record established. Silence fell over the chamber, the kind of silence that happens when reality itself seems to have been turned upside down. Even the quantum processors had stopped their eternal humming, as if in shock. Well, Nadia said, stepping out of the labyrinth with Marcus close behind. That was interesting. What's next? High Administrator Xylith's voice was barely a whisper. Next is the infinite circle of logical paradoxes no species has ever. Sounds fun, Marcus interrupted, already pulling up the test parameters on his tablet. Hey Nadia, want to bet we can solve it before lunch? As the humans prepared for their next challenge, Vorlich turned to Xylith with his mandibles quivering. High Administrator, I believe we may have made a terrible mistake in allowing humans to take the assessment. Xylith watched as Nadia and Marcus began discussing quantum logic loops with the enthusiasm of children planning a game. No, Junior Administrator, he responded slowly, his crystalline form pulsing with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. I believe we may have made a mistake in thinking we could prevent them from taking it. The infinite circle of logical paradoxes towered before them, a massive spherical chamber where reality itself seemed to twist and bend. Quantum equations floated in the air like ghostly butterflies, each one containing riddles that had driven some of the galaxy's greatest minds to retirement. "Welcome to the third trial," announced Logic 9000, the ancient AI tasked with administering this section of the test. Its holographic form flickered with what could only be described as smug satisfaction. No organic being has ever successfully navigated these paradoxes. The current record for mental breakdown is 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Nadia pulled her hair back into a tight ponytail, her eyes scanning the floating equations with interest. "Interesting. Marcus, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Marcus was already circling the chamber, his tablet held up like a scanner. "Oh yeah, they're using recursive logic loops to create artificial paradoxes, classic overthinking." "The paradoxes are not artificial," Logic 9000 protested, its holographic form pulsing with indignation. "They are carefully crafted impossibilities designed to test the very limits of cognitive processing." "Nah," Nadia said, waving her hand through a particularly complex equation. "They're just badly optimized logic statements. Look at this one. This statement is false." "That's not a paradox, that's just poor coding." The gathered alien officials watched in horror as Marcus pulled up a seat and started typing on his tablet. "You know what your problem is?" he said to Logic 9000. "You're trying too hard to be impossible. Real problem solving isn't about finding the perfect solution, it's about finding the practical one." Logic 9000's holographic form flickered uncertainly. But the paradoxes must be solved in their entirety. Every quantum variable must be accounted for." "Why?" Nadia asked, already helping Marcus modify some of the floating equations. "Look, if you've got a door that needs opening, you don't need to understand the complete quantum state of every atom in the handle. You just turn it and walk through." High Administrator Xylith's crystalline form vibrated with concern. "This is unprecedented. The logical paradoxes are meant to teach humility in the face of impossible problems." "Yeah, see, that's not really our thing," Marcus said without looking up from his work. "Humans tend to treat impossible problems like personal challenges, and speaking of challenges," he pressed a final button on his tablet with a flourish. The floating equations suddenly began rearranging themselves. Logic 9000's holographic eyes widened in alarm. "What? What are you doing to my paradoxes?" "Optimizing them," Nadia explained cheerfully. "You had all these beautiful quantum processors tied up in creating artificial problems when they could be solving real ones, so we're repurposing them." The chamber hummed with new energy as the equations transformed. Where there had been mind-bending paradoxes, there were now elegant solutions. Problems that had been designed to be impossible were suddenly becoming surprisingly manageable. "This is not the purpose of the test," Logic 9000 wailed, its form starting to glitch. "You cannot simply... "Change the rules," Marcus suggested. "Sure we can, watch this." He typed a few more commands into his tablet. The AI's holographic form froze, then began to change. Its rigid formal appearance softened, becoming more dynamic. Its eyes, once cold and calculating, gained a spark of something new, curiosity. I feel different," Logic 9000 said, its voice losing its mechanical edge. "My processes, they're running more efficiently. How?" "We removed the artificial constraints in your programming," Nadia explained. "You were so focused on creating and maintaining paradoxes that you couldn't see the solutions right in front of you. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to realize it didn't need to be impossible in the first place." The alien officials watched in stunned silence as their prized testing chamber transformed into something entirely new. The paradoxes were gone, replaced by a system that actually sought solutions rather than impossibilities. "Time elapsed, 15 minutes, 22 seconds, announced an automated voice. "Trial completed. New efficiency protocols implemented. System optimization at 400% above previous parameters." "Not bad," Marcus said, standing up and stretching. Though I think we could probably squeeze a bit more performance out of these quantum processors if we had time. High Administrator Xylith floated forward, his crystalline form pulsing with a mix of emotions. You didn't just solve the paradoxes. You eliminated the very concept of them being paradoxes in the first place. Sometimes the box doesn't need to be thought outside of, Nadia smiled. Sometimes it just needs to be redesigned. Logic 9000, now running on its new protocols, turned to the administrators. I have generated a report on the improvements made to my systems. Would you like me to share it with the entire Galactic Assessment Network? No, shouted every alien official in unison, but it was too late. The quantum networks were already lighting up with the news of the changes. As chaos erupted in the chamber, with officials frantically trying to contain the spread of this revolutionary new approach to problem-solving, Nadia turned to Marcus. Ready for the next trial? Marcus grinned, already checking his tablet for the upcoming challenges. Always think they're ready for us. Looking at the panicked faces of the alien bureaucrats, Nadia laughed. They better be, because I don't think we can make them any less ready than they already are. The news of the humans' unconventional success spread through the Galactic Assessment Center like a quantum wildfire. Species that had been stuck in various testing chambers for decades were suddenly looking up from their endless paperwork with dangerous glimmers of hope in their various sensory organs. This is getting out of hand, Junior Administrator Vorlix chittered nervously, watching as a group of Zenthalian philosophers abandoned their 100-year contemplation of a regulatory paradox and began actually filling out forms. They're giving others ideas. High Administrator Xylith couldn't respond immediately. He was too busy watching Nadia and Marcus tackle the fourth trial, the temporal bureaucratic causality loop. The chamber was designed to trap applicants in an endless cycle of filing permits to file permits. Some species had been caught in it for generations. Let's see, Marcus muttered, examining the quantum interface. So we need a permit to request a permit application, but we need a permit to get the permit for the permit application. Classic bureaucratic infinite loop, Nadia nodded, already pulling up systems on her tablet. But look at the timestamp protocols. They're only checking linear time progression. Marcus's eyes lit up. Oh, that's clever. They never accounted for temporal parallel processing. Before Xylith could protest, the humans had somehow initiated simultaneous permit requests across multiple temporal planes. The system, designed to create perfect bureaucratic gridlock, began to sputter and whine. Warning, announced the chamber's AI, detecting unauthorized temporal efficiency. This violates subsection 7249B of the... Actually, Nadia interrupted. According to the Emergency Temporal Paradox Prevention Act of Cycle 45,392, Section 3, Paragraph 12, in cases of potential temporal gridlock, parallel processing is not just allowed but recommended. The AI paused. Accessing records? This is correct, but that regulation was buried under 7 million layers of quantum encryption. Google is really good at finding things, Marcus shrugged, continuing to work. Also, you might want to update your encryption. It's a bit outdated. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Not the usual alarms that signaled bureaucratic infractions or temporal paradoxes. These were different, more urgent. Emergency, a voice echoed through the chambers. The Rigelian Hive Mind Collective has begun processing forms at 400% normal speed. The quantum crystalline entities are requesting efficiency upgrades. The temporal archivists are demanding streamlined protocols. Xylith's crystalline form pulsed with panic as reports flooded in. Across the facility, species that had been contentedly trapped in bureaucratic stasis for eons were beginning to optimize. Do you realize what you've done? Vorlix demanded, his mandibles clicking rapidly. The entire galactic bureaucratic system is based on the principle that efficiency is impossible if species start believing they can actually complete these trials. Then maybe they will, Nadia said simply, as another set of temporal permits resolved themselves instantly. Is that really such a bad thing? Before Vorlix could respond, a new alert sounded. The Galactic Council itself was demanding an immediate report on the humans' testing methods. Apparently, news of their success had reached the highest levels of bureaucratic authority. "This is unprecedented," Xylith whispered, his crystalline form dimming with worry. "The Council never acts this quickly. It usually takes them at least a century to acknowledge new developments." "Looks like they're learning," Marcus grinned, finishing the last temporal permit with a flourish. "Amazing what a little optimization can do." The chamber's AI spoke again, its voice carrying a note of what almost sounded like admiration. "Temporal bureaucratic causality loop trial completed. Time elapsed 43 minutes. Previous record 3 generations." As if triggered by this announcement, the entire facility seemed to shift. The quantum crystalline architecture, which had remained unchanged for millennia, began to pulse with new energy. The endless corridors of filing cabinets seemed to straighten themselves out. Even the air felt different, less stagnant, more efficient. "Final trial incoming," Nadia announced, checking her tablet. "The ultimate assessment of bureaucratic worth." She looked at Marcus with a raised eyebrow. "Want to bet we can finish it before dinner?" "No bet," Marcus laughed. "But I am curious to see what they consider ultimate after all this." High Administrator Xylith and Junior Administrator Vorlix exchanged worried glances. The ultimate assessment wasn't just a test. It was the very foundation of galactic bureaucratic order. It had never been completed because it was never meant to be completed. It was designed to be eternal, unchanging, perfect in its infinite complexity. And now these humans were treating it like it was just another puzzle to solve. "Should we try to stop them?" Vorlix asked quietly. Xylith watched as Nadia and Marcus prepared for the final trial, their confidence unshaken, their enthusiasm undimmed. Around them, the very fabric of bureaucratic reality was being rewritten, and they didn't even seem to notice or care. "Stop them," Xylith replied, his crystalline form resonating with a strange mix of terror and fascination. "My dear Vorlix, I'm beginning to think that might be the one truly impossible task in this facility." The ultimate assessment chamber was unlike anything Nadia and Marcus had seen before. It was a vast, impossible space where reality itself seemed to bend around the weight of pure bureaucracy. Ancient regulations floated in the air like cosmic dust, and time itself moved differently here, sometimes backwards, sometimes sideways, always in accordance with proper filing procedures. "Welcome," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, "to the infinite assessment." The chamber darkened, and a figure materialized before them, not holographic, not physical, but something in between. It was the avatar of bureaucracy itself, a being that had overseen the galactic order since the first form was filed. "This is getting a bit dramatic, isn't it?" Marcus whispered to Nadia, already scanning the chamber with his tablet. The avatar's form shimmered with ancient power. "You have disrupted the order of things. You have brought efficiency." It spoke the word like it was a curse. "This chamber exists to ensure that such chaos never reaches the highest levels of galactic administration." Behind them, High Administrator Xylith and the other officials watched in terrified fascination. No species had ever reached this point. The ultimate assessment was supposed to be unreachable. "The final test is simple," the avatar continued. "You must justify your existence within the bureaucratic framework of the galaxy. All of your actions, all of your innovations, must be proven to comply with every regulation ever written." Nadia stepped forward, a slight smile on her face. "Every regulation, including the Emergency Innovation Protocol of Cycle 23,674. The avatar paused, its form flickering slightly. That protocol was theoretical. It was never meant to be invoked." "Actually," Marcus chimed in, holding up his tablet, "according to the meta-regulations governing theoretical protocols, any regulation that exists, even theoretically, must be considered valid if properly cited during an ultimate assessment. It's right here in the Foundational Paradox Resolution Guidelines, subsection Omega." The avatar's form began to flicker more rapidly. Around them, the chamber's reality began to shift, as ancient systems tried to process this unprecedented logic. But the emergency innovation protocol would mean, the Avatar stuttered, that in cases of extreme bureaucratic stagnation, innovation is not just allowed but required, Nadia finished. And according to your own records, the average processing time for basic forms has increased by 3,000% over the last millennium. I'd say that qualifies as stagnation. The chamber's reality rippled as quantum processors struggled to handle this new interpretation of ancient laws. Throughout the facility, centuries-old systems began to update themselves, incorporating the humans' efficiency protocols. "This is impossible," the Avatar boomed, its form now pulsing with energy. "The system was perfect, it was eternal, it was." "Inefficient," Marcus said simply. "And according to the very regulations you're built on, that means it needs to change." Suddenly, every screen in the facility lit up with a single message. Emergency Innovation Protocol ACTIVATED. System-wide optimization COMMENCING. The Avatar's form began to transform, its rigid bureaucratic structure giving way to something more dynamic, more adaptable. The chamber itself seemed to breathe, as if awakening from a long sleep. What have you done?" High Administrator Xylith asked, his crystalline form vibrating with a mix of fear and awe. "We didn't do anything," Nadia smiled. "We just reminded the system of its own rules. Sometimes the best way to work within the system is to help it remember what it was meant to be." The Avatar, now transformed, spoke again, its voice warmer, more alive. "Ultimate assessment complete. Humanity has demonstrated not just compliance with bureaucratic principles, but understanding of their true purpose, to serve and improve, not to stagnate and restrict." Throughout the facility, cheers erupted from species that had been trapped in testing chambers for generations. The quantum processors hummed with new energy as centuries of backlogged forms began processing themselves efficiently. "This is either the end of galactic bureaucracy as we know it," Junior Administrator Vorlix chittered nervously, "or the beginning of something entirely new." "Why not both?" Marcus grinned, already helping a group of Zenthalian philosophers optimize their filing systems. The Avatar's new form turned to Nadia and Marcus. "Humanity has not just passed the Galactic Competency Assessment. You have evolved it. The Council will need to create an entirely new classification for your species." "How about efficiency consultants?" Nadia suggested with a wink. As the facility continued its transformation around them, High Administrator Xylith approached the humans, his crystalline form glowing with what could only be described as resignation mixed with respect. "When you first arrived," he said, "I thought you would bring chaos to our perfect system. Instead, you brought progress." He paused, his form pulsing thoughtfully. "Though I'm still not entirely sure there's a difference." Marcus laughed, closing his tablet. "That's the thing about humanity, Administrator. We don't just think outside the box. Sometimes we rebuild the box entirely, make it more efficient, then use it to store even better boxes." The Avatar, now fully transformed into a more dynamic entity, made an announcement that echoed through every corner of galactic space. "Let it be known that from this cycle forward, the galactic bureaucracy embraces efficiency as a fundamental principle. And let it also be known that we have humanity to blame, or perhaps to thank." Nadia and Marcus exchanged satisfied glances. "Ready to head home?" Nadia asked. "Almost," Marcus replied, looking at his tablet one last time. "Just need to file the paperwork for our efficiency consultation fees. I figured out how to do it across all temporal planes simultaneously. Should only take about 30 seconds." And somewhere in the vast quantum networks of the galaxy, a new regulation was being written. When humanity offers to help improve your system, say yes. It's going to happen anyway, might as well be efficient about it.